Hello, everybody. So I'd like to show you a couple of photos. What comes to your mind when you see this? It is obviously a flute, yeah. Somebody says it. Somebody said it's jackfruit. I think someone mentioned durian. Well, it is obviously a flute, but it's not. Um, and the next photo. How about this one? What does it remind you? Um, yeah, it's an accessory. It's a hat piece. Would you like to wear it? Yeah, I think this one is pretty universal. We used to have it in every paddy field, and I think we still do in some places. So the flute is known as tarap. Um, what's so special about tarap is that it's native to Borneo. Now I'm glad that I met a fellow Sabahan among you guys last night, and he mentioned about it. So what's so special about it is that it's native to Borneo, so it doesn't grow anywhere else. And it's very famous in my state, Sabah, where I come from. So that's why I think many of you do not really know what flute it is. This, on the other hand, is what we call a slimpak. Now, slimpak is a hat piece. It's a hat piece worn by the women of Bajau Sama descent during traditional ceremonies. And the ladies are still wearing it during their weddings. Now, they do wear modern gowns, and then it's a must to wear this traditional attire. So it's something that most of the ladies from my ethnic group, Bajau, that are very excited to wear every time they are going to have their weddings. And this one, it's in our Bajau language, we call it belek belek. It means scarecrow. So my village is a vast paddy field, so it is pretty much everywhere. I'm telling you all of this because these were parts of my childhood. And they have been my inspiration for some of my work, including the one that I'm going to talk about today. Now, let me ask you, have you ever experienced of coming up with ideas that you were so passionate about, that you were so excited about, you really wanted to do it, but you just couldn't seem to connect them or make them meaningful or make them significant, at least for some people. And you felt like letting go, but something inside you told you not to. Now that happened to me many times. I got all of these ideas, and I felt like I needed to do something with it. And today, I'm going to share with you my experience of finding my ways, try to make my ideas work and gain acceptance. So, since I'm a school teacher, can't you think of ways on how to turn these into teaching strategies, teaching materials? Because since I'm a teacher, that's my profession, that's what I do. So if something that I'm excited about, the first thing that I will think about is how to integrate it into teaching. But then you probably wonder, like, what is he talking about? Like these, do you even think these will interest students in the 21st century, where most of these are considered obsolete or outdated? So as somebody who loves to imagine, I decided to immortalize my active imagination that has been thriving since my childhood, that has been thriving in my childhood, and that's how Think Tales was created. So Think Tales is my initiative. It's a collection of tales related to the indigenous people in Sabah, including their legends, traditions, languages, and myths. So basically, Sabah has a great diversity of ethnic groups and languages. But it wasn't easy. When I first wrote my story, I didn't write it as an indigenous tale, but rather a Western fairy tale, because I thought it was a terrible idea to write indigenous tales since people were not familiar with such stories. Now, even in Malaysia, we are one diverse nation, but people from West Malaysia will not be really familiar with all the cultures and the languages and the ethnic groups in Sabah. And even in Sabah alone, people are not really familiar with other ethnic groups or native languages, their cultures and their languages. So that's why I thought, if I do this, people might not be familiar with it, and they probably, couldn't really accept it the way that I wanted them to be. But I changed my mind once, when after presenting my work at a conference in Kuala Lumpur. Now, I went from to Kota Kinabalu, and if you're familiar with Sabah, so it was 2 hours drive across mountains, and I'm really talking about mountains. And I flew from Kota Kinabalu to Kuala Lumpur, and it was 2 hours 30 minutes flight. Now I stayed at a budget hotel, and with me I got a stack of my tingtals, nicely printed and compiled. And I did everything at my own expense. You know, the flight, the accommodation, the material. Now, I was so excited to let other people know about my work, only to be frustrated and mortified because there were only very few people, about 6, who attended my slot, which was the last slot during the conference where people were leaving. And my work, Tingtals, was heavily criticized because, well, it's irrelevant, it's childish, and it's unsuitable for secondary school students, and I'm a secondary school teacher. Now, why are you using these stories? Why did you even have to write your own tales? Now, why don't you just use the materials that are already available? Like, your students are upper secondary. This just doesn't suit them. Now, I remember some of the comments. So I was mortified and I was disappointed with myself, especially when I spent so much effort on it and I spent so much money on it. But as much as it hurt me, I needed to admit that some of the criticism was right. I needed to listen, learn, and improve. And that's where I began writing not Western fairy tales anymore, but indigenous tales, Bajau tales for all the learners. Because one of the teachers stated that since you are from Sabah and then you are Bajau, you should be writing about indigenous tales that are native to your state, your land. So I did that, and what I did next was that I attempted another platform to showcase my work, and this time it was an innovation contest in Kuala Lumpur. Now, for teachers, sometimes teachers do take part in innovation contests. They might not build some sort of devices or gadgets, but usually when they take part in innovation contests, it's related to a teaching approach. So I didn't intend to take part in this innovation contest, but since I'm a teacher, so I was there to accompany my students, I thought I should just take advantage of me being there by taking part in it too. So I had to pitch my work, Tingtals, to a panel of judges. At first I thought I got nothing to lose. And just like before, I thought the judges hated me, and I received some really harsh comments, and I felt so humiliated. You know, one of the judges, he was shaking his head, and he said, "This is not an innovation. There's nothing innovative about it." So it was tough for me. And what made it worse was that there were many other participants who witnessed the whole thing, including my own colleagues, fellow teachers, and my own students. So it was tough, but I knew I couldn't be defensive. I needed to figure out ways how to make my ideas more practical and how can it be replicated in other contexts, which what the judges wanted. So it occurred to me that if I got stories to tell, so did my students. So what I did was that I adapted Tingtals to become stimuli for my students to tell their stories. So now it's not just me telling them my stories, using my stories in my classroom, but they will be telling their stories too. Especially, they will be telling their stories too, and hopefully they will learn from it. But I did wonder. I began to wonder what made Tingtal special. There were so many other tales out there, but why this? So I felt that when I wrote my short stories, the short stories were related to my origin as Bajau, as someone who speaks Bajau language, as someone who practices its tradition, as someone who upholds its values. And I never realized the beauty, richness, and uniqueness of these until I grew older. And I believe everyone can relate to this because everybody has their own unique stories, and their stories can be personal, cultural, and definitely meaningful. But then I wonder, I've told them my stories, will they be eager to do it? Will they be willing to do it? Now, because I feel like if they could do that, it's very important, it's very valuable, especially in our state, Sabah, where there are dozens of indigenous groups and there are multiple native languages. To my surprise, there were all sorts of stories told by the students. Now, one student from Kota Blut, my hometown, explained the origin about balan-balan. And what are balan-balans? Now, balan-balans are known as werebeasts. that terrorized our small town. Balan-balans were originally humans who transformed into beasts at night. It is considered a supernatural curse that is passed from one generation to the next one. Although it appears more like a genetic makeup, most people don't know that it is apparently contagious too. And people can contract it and become one, and they can become balan-balan. So if you feel like you want to experience werewolf-like transformation, you can come to my hometown and get infected, and you might become balan-balan. But don't worry, although it's infectious, but there's a cure, there's a ritual that can be performed to heal people once they get infected. So is it a supernatural curse, genetic makeup, or advanced form of virus? So that is a question that we never know the answer is. So sounds to me like it can be the next supernatural blockbuster. One student told us about the legendary love story between Kuding King, a mortal man, and Kinomuluk, a princess from the sky, whose love story was so touching, I think it could inspire the next chart-topping pop song. And this story is more popular among the Kadazan Dusun community, while the Balan-Balan stories are more popular in Kota Belud, especially among the Bajau community. Now, one girl told us about the story, a story about a girl who took part in a beauty pageant contest. Her name is Dang Insum. And unlike any other beauty pageant contest, this one tested the ladies' fighting skills. So I thought it's incredible. Unlike, we don't do that in Miss World or Miss Universe, and we have been talking about female empowerment and breaking stereotypes related to beauty. But this story about Dang Insum taking part in beauty pageant contests, sounds to me like Dang Insum should be an idol to little girls. And the story of Dang Insum is very famous among the Malay, especially those from Brunei. We usually in Sabah, we call them as Brunei. They identify themselves as Brunei. Or maybe just a personal story of a girl. This girl, when she was little, she competed in a fashion contest during Kaamatan. Now, if you're not familiar with Kaamatan, it's a harvest festival. It's a very famous local festival in Sabah. Now, she felt bad that she didn't win it, and she disappointed her mother for not winning it. But she's glad that it taught her to be brave to speak in public. So all of these stories took their local folklores, past experience, and origin to a whole new level, filled with excitement, engagement, and great messages. What intrigued me most was the level of excitement and engagement that I could see from my students when they were telling their stories, when they were listening to their peers' stories. Now, most importantly, since I'm an English language teacher, they were speaking in English, they were being inquisitive, they were being imaginative, they were doing their own research about their past, about the legends and the myths and the history, and they were being reflective of the stories that they were telling or they were listening from their friends. So they were talking about personal experience that they used to feel embarrassed about, but now they can use it to send a message. And they were talking and laughing about taboos, like balan-balan, the one that I've mentioned before. It used to make people feel insulted, but what do you know? It can be a cultural symbol that people can take pride of. And they were listening to legends and myths about the land that we have never heard before, and now they begin to learn more about it and appreciate it better. Now, looking back at the past, I'm glad that I had these ideas. I thought it was ridiculous at first, but I continued to pursue this idea and learn so much along the way. So last year, my work, Think Tells, was recognized as the winner of a coveted international award. I love saying that. Senior Australia Education Link 2018, where I was given a grant of 10,000 Australian dollar to expand the project beyond my classroom across the state. Now, I became the first Malaysian to win the award. And thank you so much. And Think Tells was also awarded gold medal at World Invention Innovation Contest in South Korea last year. And one of the short stories that I wrote, Belek Belek, was a top 10 finalist in Commonwealth class story writing organized by British Council. Now, people are asking me more and more about this idea. I've been invited to speak about it at conferences, seminars, and workshops. Even just now, I received a text message. Somebody from Kedah wanted to invite me. So, and I've been getting this feedback that went, wow, what an excellent idea. You're very smart, you're very creative. How did you come up with these ideas? Now, honestly, I felt honored and humbled by these responses, loved them. But I'll never forget what brought this idea to where it is now. It started as something childish and silly, and I think it still is. It had been criticized many times, and I think I have felt humiliated at several occasions. But now, ThinkTels is being recognized internationally. It has been getting constructive feedback and praises, and it has been downloaded over 10,000 times online by teachers from all over the world, and more people are getting curious about it. And this is just one idea of mine. I have several ideas that have been getting several recognition. One idea of mine related to zombie apocalypse, and the TV host and the radio host were asking me live on air about this zombie thingy. So I guess watching those zombie series does have its perk. And then another idea of mine was inspired from Harry Potter, and I presented at a conference in France in front of audience from all over the world, and I gained recognition for it. So what can I say? I'm just, as you can see, a clumsy, nerdy, desperate, ridiculous person who tries so hard to push his ideas out into the world. So my advice to you, if you have ideas that you think that they might be random, that they might be ridiculous, and you might experience criticism, failure, humiliation, what do? Do you quit? Do you give up? Do you feel bad for having those ideas? You shouldn't. What you do is that you try really, really hard to turn them into a reality and show the world that your idea is real, you are real. Because your idea, no matter how random it is, no matter how ridiculous it is, if you can think it, you can make it happen. So let's make it happen. Thank you.